The millionaire vowed to marry the first woman who walked in. She walked in unaware. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, which city or country are you watching this story from? I love knowing how far these stories are reaching. And if you enjoy heartfelt love stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any upcoming ones. And you'll help this channel grow and keep bringing stories that touch the heart. The night was warm in Miami. The main hall of the Hale Grand Resort sparkled with crystal chandeliers and muffled laughter. Suited men clinked glasses of French champagne, while women in glittering dresses paraded as if walking a red carpet. The event was private, exclusive to investors and celebrities, a parade of vanity in the heart of a city where everything shines, but little is real. Grayson Hale, heir to the Hale Hotel empire, was leaning against the bar, holding a glass of expensive whiskey. Tall, imposing, wearing a navy blue tailored suit and purposefully tousled light brown hair, he looked bored with the world around him. His grayish blue eyes watched people with indifference. At 33, Grayson carried the coldness of someone raised, among figures and contracts, not among hugs and affection. "Do you really believe you'll love someone someday?" teased one of the partners, laughing loudly. Grayson swirled the glass between his fingers and replied with disdain, "Love? That's for people with time to waste. I prefer bets. At least, they make sense." Another friend, already drunk, threw out a challenge. "Then here's a bet. Marry the first woman who walks into this hall. No exceptions." Grayson raised an eyebrow. Silence fell over the group. "Deal," he replied with a cold smile. "I'll marry the first woman who walks through that door. Tonight." Across the resort, Valentina Reyes walked silently through the hallways. At 26, she wore the simple uniform of a housekeeper, black pants, white shirt, and a worn name badge. Her long, straight dark brown hair was tied in a rushed bun. Her face, with Latin features and light brown skin, showed signs of exhaustion, the kind that doesn't just come from physical work, but from life itself. She had been called in at the last minute to retrieve a jacket left behind by a wealthy guest in the event hall. She knew she shouldn't enter during the party, but the clock was nearing midnight and she just wanted to finish her shift and go home, where her sick mother and teenage sister were waiting for her. With hesitant steps, she pushed open the golden doors to the hall. Grayson saw her first. The room, until then noisy, seemed to stop. Valentina entered with no makeup, her gaze steady, like someone who doesn't bow down, but still unsure why everyone was looking at her as if she were a spectacle. She didn't know, but she had just become the center of a bet. That one? Seriously? "Oh, Grayson," one of his friends laughed. He crossed his arms and replied without blinking, "That's what I said." The first woman who walked in, Valentina, walked to the bar, looking for the manager. She felt eyes piercing her skin like blades. A rich woman whispered to her husband. A waiter tried to discreetly warn her, but it was too late. One of the men from the group approached and said mockingly, "Congratulations. You've just been chosen to marry the millionaire of the night." Valentina frowned. "What are you talking about?" Grayson took 2 steps toward her, now with a smile on his lips. "Relax, it's just a joke. Or maybe not. That's up to you." The guests laughed. Valentina felt her face burn. "I came to pick up a jacket, that's all." She turned to leave, but the cameras were already rolling. One of the guests was streaming everything live on Instagram. And before she could react, the caption appeared. "She walked in. He promised. Will he follow through?" The next day, the video had over 2 million views. But none showed the humiliation. None showed the expression of embarrassment or the scornful looks. Only a convenient narrative, the ambitious woman who accepted the bet. Valentina never wanted to be famous, and now she was. For the wrong reason, she spent the night crying in the small room she shared with her mother. "They laughed at me, Mom, like I was nothing." Her mother held her hand and murmured, "They have money. But they don't know what dignity is. And you do. Across town, Grayson was watching the viral video on his phone, and he smiled. Not out of malice, but because he still had no idea of the storm he had stirred. The warm evening breeze of Miami still blew through the cracks of the Hale Grand Resort, where the scandal had just been born, disguised as a joke. Valentina walked out of the hall with quick steps, trying to keep her posture, even with her heart racing. The laughter echoed in her mind like muffled gunshots. The freezing air conditioning contrasted with the heat rising to her face. Not physical heat, but shame. Upon reaching the hallway, she leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath. Her fingers trembled. She didn't quite understand what had happened, but she knew she had been used, ridiculed, and that this wasn't just another hard day at work. It was something bigger. Inside the hall, Grayson was still surrounded by his friends who applauded him as if he had won a game. He took a sip of whiskey and made a comment that would be caught by the microphones from the live stream. She was just a maid, but a bet is a bet, right? The next day, the video from the previous night had been cut, edited and shared on gossip pages, influencer profiles and entertainment channels. The created narrative was clear. A bold millionaire made a promise, and a humble woman showed up as if destiny had guided her steps. The internet loved that kind of story. The problem, it was a lie. In the cramped living room of the apartment she shared with her mother and younger sister, Valentina held her phone with cold hands. Notifications wouldn't stop coming. Comments, jokes, memes with her face, and phrases like, "She caught the golden fish," flooded the networks. "Why are they saying this, Mom? I just went in to get a jacket. I didn't even know there were people in there." Her mother, Maria Reyes, sat beside her on the small couch, stained by time. She looked at her daughter with teary eyes. Because people would rather laugh at those who fight than face their own cowardice. At the hotel entrance later that day, Valentina tried to go in to return a key she had found in her uniform pocket, but she was stopped. The security guard, embarrassed, avoided her gaze. "I'm sorry, Val. Orders from management. You're suspended until further notice." "Suspended? Why? What did I do?" He didn't answer, but she already knew. Grayson, on the other hand, ignored the turmoil. Sitting in his penthouse, facing a glass wall with an ocean view, he analyzed the video's reach. His image consultant, a blonde woman wearing dark sunglasses and a serious expression, broke the silence. "You don't understand what you've done. If this girl speaks, if she shows the other side, this turns into a disaster." Grayson smiled coldly. "She won't talk, and even if she does, no one listens to someone in a uniform." Meanwhile, Valentina sank into her own pain. She tried to explain the truth on social media, but her posts were ignored or ridiculed. The strength she used to protect her family now seemed insufficient to protect herself. That same night, sitting on the tiny balcony of her home, eyes lost in the starless sky, Valentina made a silent promise to herself. "I won't be anyone's toy. They're going to hear me, even if I have to scream alone." In the background, a new notification popped up on the phone lying on the table, an invitation from a local TV show to tell her side of the story. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long while, her eyes were no longer full of fear. They were full of something more dangerous, determination, and on the other side of town, Grayson was still smiling, unaware that the woman from the bet was about to become his greatest challenge. The next morning dawned heavy in Miami, as if the air itself carried the weight of the previous night's humiliation. In the modest neighborhood where Valentina lived, the silence was broken only by the sounds of the city slowly waking up. The sun had barely risen when she was already up, trying to understand what was happening. Her younger sister, Lucia, only 17, rushed into the room with her phone in hand, her face in shock. Val, you're everywhere. Valentina sat up on the bed, her eyes still swollen. She took her sister's phone with trembling hands. A video titled "The Millionaire's Chosen One" filled the screen. The content showed her entering the hall, the laughter, the comments, but everything had been edited. They cut out the part where she tried to leave. They cut out the uncomfortable looks, the whispers. In their place, a romantic song played in the background, and a caption hinted that she had accepted the proposal, with a shy smile and interest in her eyes. That's not what happened, she whispered, barely audible. The video already had more than 4 million views. Influencers commented, online newspapers speculated. Some called her clever, others an opportunist. Many simply laughed. The viral story had slipped from her hands and now had a life of its own. At the resort, Grayson was watching everything on the bathroom mirror TV while calmly shaving. The reporter spoke with forced enthusiasm, and it all started with a bold promise made by Grayson Hale, heir to the Hale luxury resort chain. Did destiny truly bring these two opposite worlds together? The internet is divided, love at first sight or a masterful move. Grayson smirked. Narrative sells, and I'm the product. Meanwhile, Valentina, desperate, tried to speak with hotel management. When she arrived at the front desk, she was met with uncomfortable stares. The receptionist, a blonde woman with a flawless appearance and a name tag reading Deborah, tried to be polite. Miss Reyes, management has informed us that any matter related to last night must be handled through legal counsel. Mr. Hale is unavailable. Unavailable, Valentina repeated, swallowing her anger. He exposed me, ridiculed me, I lost my job, and he's unavailable. Deborah averted her gaze. You may send any formal communication by email. Would you like me to write down the address? Valentina left without another word, her eyes full of tears. But she wasn't crying just from shame. She cried from powerlessness, from realizing that in the world she lives in, the truth doesn't always hold value, that all it takes is someone editing a video, telling a convincing version, and that's it. Judgment is passed. Back at the apartment, her mother tried to console her. Sweetheart, you know who you are. This will pass. Pass? They're calling me a gold digger, Mom. People are threatening me in the comments. I'm the country's joke. Lucia, sitting beside her, murmured, They don't know you, but I do, and we're going to get through this. That night, Valentina watched the video again. She repeated every second, every cut, every edited line, and she noticed the cruelest detail, Grayson's eyes, cold, distant, and satisfied. He didn't defend her, didn't correct anyone, didn't deny anything. On screen, he looked like the hero of the story, and she, the opportunist. But for the first time, Valentina didn't just feel hurt, she felt furious. The next day, she responded to the local talk show's invitation, not to clean her image, but to tell the truth. If they want a story, then they're going to hear mine. And on the other side of the city, Grayson toasted with investors, convinced that the bet had been a publicity success. He had no idea that the woman who walked in unknowingly now had every reason to stay, and it wouldn't be for love. The city lights seemed to mock Valentina as she walked through the streets of Miami with her mother's old coat draped over her shoulders. The night wind wasn't enough to cool the internal fever of indignation. Rising within her, notifications on her phone wouldn't stop. Memes, twisted headlines, videos reacting to the unlikely romance between the maid and the millionaire. The media had made its choice, and she was the villain disguised as innocent. The next morning, when she arrived at the hotel to try to speak with management in person, she found her badge deactivated. The turnstile wouldn't turn. The security guard, visibly uncomfortable, escorted her to the front desk. There, one of the HR coordinators awaited her with a bureaucratic, cold expression. Miss Reyes, We've been instructed to terminate your employment with Hale Grand Resort, effective immediately. Valentina swallowed hard. Terminate? I've worked here for over 2 years. I've never received a warning. Why are you firing me? The woman answered without looking up from the paperwork. The impact of recent events compromises the hotel's image. Your continued presence is no longer viable. Unviable, because I was publicly humiliated. Her voice rose unintentionally. Because someone made a bet and used my image as a joke? The coordinator adjusted her glasses. The decision has been made. You will be compensated for the remaining days of the month. Good luck. Valentina walked out with teary eyes, and her head held high. She wouldn't let them see her broken. Not there, but as soon as she reached the street, her knees gave out. She sat on the curb in the shadow of luxury cars parked nearby and cried. Cried like she hadn't cried in a long time. Meanwhile, at the top of a glass building in Miami's business district, Grayson Hale watched a report on the morning news. The presenter smiled with forced enthusiasm, and the romance of the year has a new chapter. Sources say the maid involved with Grayson Hale has been dismissed from the hotel following the viral video. Online users are divided. Was it fair or persecution? Grayson turned off the TV without reacting. He sat in a leather armchair facing the sea. His advisor, wearing a flawless beige suit, rushed into the room. You should have made a statement yesterday. This is getting too big, and the silence is working against you. He calmly crossed his legs. If I speak, I'll just give it more attention. People will forget in 2 days. She sighed. You're not dealing with numbers. You're dealing with people, and this woman has a voice. Grayson stood, adjusted his shirt cuffs, and walked to the window. Not for long. Across town, Valentina took another hit. Her phone rang. It was the coordinator of the social project where she was competing for a full nursing scholarship. She answered with hope. Miss Reyes, we're very sorry, but the recent exposure on social media forces us to temporarily pause the selection process. What do you mean pause? She asked, her voice cracking. It's a board decision. We have sponsors concerned about the institution's image. We hope you understand. She hung up without being able to respond. The world, already hard, now felt cruel. That night, sitting on the bed with Lucia, asleep beside her, and her mother, coughing in the room down the hall, Valentina stared at the ceiling for long minutes. She felt like she was sinking into a bottomless ocean, and no one was reaching out a hand, but deep inside, there was a flame that wouldn't go out. They took everything from me. My job, my shot at college, even my name. But they're not taking my truth. For the first time, she picked up her phone and began recording a video. My name is Valentina Reyes, and this is my side of the story, the one you haven't heard yet. Valentina's homemade recording, filmed with trembling hands and teary eyes, didn't go viral like the bet video, but it reached the right people. Attentive hearts, people who could recognize real pain when they saw it. In the following days, she tried to move on, still without responses from the press, still being mocked online. Bills piled up, rent overdue, her mother unable to buy medicine. The scholarship vanished like smoke. Valentina decided to accept a new job, quiet, tiring, but dignified. A community home care agency referred her for a position as a private caregiver. The pay was minimal, but it was something. The new patient was named Arthur Whitaker, a retired state Supreme Court judge, slow-speaking and sharp-eyed behind thick glasses. He lived alone in a large, quiet house with books stacked even in the hallways. More books than friends, more stories than visits. Valentina arrived on her first day in a simple uniform, hair tied back and eyes reserved. Upon seeing her walk in, Arthur made a dry remark. You don't look like a nurse. You look like someone this world's trampled on, but who never stopped walking. She didn't reply, just smiled respectfully and began cleaning the living room. In the days that followed, Arthur noticed her silence, the kind of silence that hides deep wounds. Slowly, he started making conversation. He learned she liked chamomile tea, that she read romance novels in her free time, and that she'd been unfairly fired from a hotel. "What's the name of the hotel?" he asked one day while she was changing the armchair cushions. "Hale Grand," she replied hesitantly. Arthur raised his eyebrows. "Ah, the one from the scandal." Valentina froze. After trying so hard to forget, the words brought it all back. "That was me," she murmured, barely audible. "The woman in the video." He looked at her for a long moment, then shifted in his chair. "You do know that video was manipulated, don't you?" She nodded. "But no one cares. They've already told their version." Arthur fell silent for a moment, then cleared his throat. "My dear, you're talking to someone who spent 30 years judging cases like this. And let me tell you something. When justice doesn't come to you, sometimes you have to go to it." Valentina smiled, tired. "I don't have money for a lawyer, but I have contacts." From that day on, Arthur began making calls. He reached out to former colleagues, old allies from his time on the bench, and he got the name of a civil rights attorney with a track record of defending cases ignored by the media. Her name was Naomi Fisher. Young, black, idealistic, known for fighting for justice in cases of public defamation and media harassment. Naomi met Valentina days later at a quiet cafe next to the old municipal courthouse. She arrived with a folder in hand, jeans, a dark blazer, and a steady gaze. "I watched the video, both of them actually," she said directly, "and the second one screams manipulation. You've got a real case here, Valentina, a big one." "But what if I lose?" Valentina asked, uncertain. Naomi looked at her gently but firmly. "You've already lost everything, haven't you? Now it's time to take something back, even if it's just your voice." That was the beginning of the quiet turnaround. While Grayson continued to ignore the headlines and hid away in exclusive parties, Valentina, without him knowing, was starting to rise. Not with shouting, not with scandal, but with strategy, with truth, and most importantly, with someone by her side. Naomi Fisher wasted no time. She gathered every piece of evidence she could: screenshots, unedited videos, anonymous hotel employee testimonies, plus a technical report proving the intentional manipulation of the footage. She wasn't just a lawyer, she was a natural strategist. And she knew that in the age of social media, the truth only mattered when spoken out loud. In public, she was the one who made the decisive call to the local TV station known for covering human stories and confronting public figures. The pitch was risky but powerful. Valentina would tell her version live, with behind-the-scenes footage the world had never seen. Valentina hesitated. Sitting in front of the mirror in the studio's makeshift dressing room, she wore a discreet navy blue blouse, her hair down, light makeup done by a kind makeup artist who said she had recognized her pain. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Naomi asked while adjusting the collar of her shirt. "After today, nothing will be the same." Valentina looked at her reflection, her eyes steady for the first time in weeks. "That's exactly why I'm doing it." Across town, Grayson Hale was having lunch at a seaside restaurant with 2 Canadian investors. He wasn't paying attention to the TV playing in the corner, but his expression changed when he heard his name mentioned in the report. "We're live with Valentina Reyes, the woman at the center of the scandal that divided the country. For the first time, she's speaking out, and you're about to see footage that's never been shown before." The restaurant went silent. Grayson put down his silverware and turned to the screen. The image cut to the studio. Valentina, in front of the cameras, took a deep breath. The reporter, an experienced black woman named Lorraine Brooks, led the interview with seriousness. "Valentina, the whole country knows your version, or rather what they were told was your version. But you claim there was manipulation. Can you show us? Valentina looked directly at the camera. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice came out clear. I didn't walk into that hall looking for attention. I walked in because I was called. I was working. What they did to me was a trap disguised as a joke. And this is what they didn't want to show. Naomi, backstage, signaled to the video technician. The footage began to play. Valentina entering the hall, the discomfort, the whispers, the laughter. And most of all, the moment she tries to leave and is stopped by one of the guests who laughs at the situation. Valentina continued, I was turned into a meme, into a target. I lost my job. I lost my chance at an education. And the man who caused all of this never said a word. Social media exploded. The hashtag drew justice for Valentina, climbed the trending topics. But along with the support came the attacks. Some said she was playing the victim. Others asked why she waited so long to speak. But there was a difference now. She had a voice, and for the first time, she was being heard and respected. Grayson watched in silence. One of his investors looked at him. Did you know this existed? He didn't answer. He just stared at the screen, where his own face appeared, frozen in the moment he mocked her. For the first time, Grayson saw himself the way the world did. In Arthur Whitaker's living room, the former judge smiled with his eyes. He knew. He knew that the quiet girl who once walked in holding a medication tray was about to become the storm no one expected. Outside the TV station, Valentina was surprised by journalists, cameras, and shouting. But now the looks were different. Some curious, others supportive. And in the crowd, an elderly woman held a small sign with hand-drawn letters. You represent me. Valentina paused for a moment, emotional. She approached, took the woman's hands, and whispered, Thank you. I needed to know I'm not alone. And in that moment, she wasn't. The sun shone high above the skyscrapers of Miami, but inside the Hale Enterprises boardroom, the mood was tense. Grayson Hale, usually the most confident man in the room, sat with arms crossed and jaw clenched, while the director stared at him impatiently. The story with Valentina still echoed in the media. The interview was being discussed on newspapers, podcasts, and debate panels. Her hashtag remained at the top of trending topics. His name, on the other hand, was now associated with arrogance, disregard, and privilege. We need an immediate response, said one of the senior investors, a grey-haired man with a Texan accent. You're not just losing public favor. You're losing respect, and investors don't stick with sinking ships. The image director, usually reserved, was more blunt. Grayson, you're going to apologize in public, and you're going to reach out to her. It needs to seem genuine, not because you feel anything, but because it's necessary. He ran. A hand through his hair, took a deep breath, and responded coldly, If you want me to apologize, I'll apologize. But don't expect me to pretend I'm remorseful for something that was simply misunderstood. The world has already interpreted it, Grayson, and you're losing. The only way to turn this around is by playing the role you've refused from the beginning, being human. The next day, a press conference was organized in a closed-off space at a smaller hotel in the chain. Cameras, reporters, lights, everything. Meticulously rehearsed, and at the center of the stage, Grayson, in a light suit, no tie, trying to appear approachable. Beside him, a microphone reserved for Valentina, personally invited by Naomi. Backstage, Valentina wore a modest outfit in earthy tones. Hair down, expression firm. She wasn't trembling anymore. Naomi approached, adjusted her sleeve, and whispered, You don't owe him anything, only yourself. She nodded. I didn't come here to accept anything. I came to show I'm not afraid. Grayson began to speak in front of the cameras. His words came out carefully rehearsed, as if every comma had been approved by a legal team. I want to begin by saying that I deeply regret all the pain my actions caused. It was never my intention to humiliate or offend. What happened was a lapse in judgment, and I take full responsibility." Valentina took a deep breath, stepped forward, and asked for the microphone. "You want to apologize? Then look me in the eyes, Grayson." He turned. The room fell into absolute silence. She stared at him without blinking. "You don't feel remorse. You feel fear of losing power." A murmur spread through the audience. The cameras zoomed in. Grayson tried to maintain his composure, but couldn't hide the tension in his jaw. Valentina continued, "You had weeks. You had thousands of chances to tell the truth, but you only showed up now, when your numbers dropped, when your partners threatened to leave. You didn't come because you care about me. You came because you care about your image." She lowered the microphone for a moment. The words came heavy with everything she had endured. "When you played with my life, I lost my job. I lost my peace. My mother had a nervous breakdown watching the lies. My sister couldn't go to school without hearing jokes. And you were toasting with investors." Grayson remained silent, for the first time, without an answer. There was no argument that could get around that. Not anymore. Valentina stepped back, placed the microphone back on the stand, and finished. "I don't accept your apology because it wasn't for me. It was for your shareholders, and I'm not a number in a spreadsheet. I'm a person." As she walked off the stage. The room exploded in camera flashes. Some applauded, others watched in shock, but no one saw her as the girl from the video anymore. She was now a voice. Grayson stood there motionless, in front of the cameras, feeling the weight of what he had pretended not to see for so long. And for the first time, he was alone. The days following the press conference were a quiet earthquake in Grayson Hale's life. Investors backed off, invitations to events dwindled, and the Hale name lost space in the tabloids that once praised him. But what bothered him most wasn't the loss of prestige. It was Valentina's voice echoing in his mind, raw and honest, like none he had ever heard. "You don't feel remorse. You feel fear of losing power." He tried to carry on with the same indifference as always, but something inside him had already cracked, and what used to be pride was now a burden. Over time, he pulled away from the media, deactivated his personal profiles, and started visiting places he never would have set foot in before. He visited shelters with discreet names, quietly funded renovations in Latino community centers. He showed up without fuss, without cameras, just wearing a low baseball cap and eyes that observed more than they judged. At the Santa Esperanza Foundation, a support home for the elderly run on donations and volunteers in the Little Havana neighborhood, Grayson walked in for the first time as a stranger. The place was simple, with peeling walls and the smell of fresh coffee. There, he met people who smiled without wanting anything in return. For the first time, he sat with elders who didn't know his last name, played dominoes with war veterans, listened to stories, and in the middle of all that, he found someone he didn't expect. It was a hot August morning when he entered one of the rooms to visit a woman named Dorothy Wexler, his old mentor from his youth, a strong woman, former business ethics professor now with a fragile body and fading memory, but still lucid enough to recognize him as soon as he walked in. "You took your time," she said, smiling with dim eyes, seated in a worn armchair. Grayson smiled back, approaching slowly. "I had to learn to stand on my own feet first." But it wasn't Dorothy who held his attention in that room. It was the woman adjusting the pillows, focused on every move, not noticing him right away. Valentina, her hair loose, now shorter, her expression calm. She wore the home's simple uniform, but there was dignity in her every move, a serenity that completely disarmed him. When she turned and saw him, there was a heavy moment of silence. Grayson took a hesitant step. Valentina. She just looked at him, not with anger, but with a gaze that said, "I'm no longer the woman you hurt." "I didn't know you were taking care of Dorothy," he murmured. Valentina responded calmly. "She taught me about justice. I thought I should repay what I received in wisdom with care." Dorothy, sitting between them, watched in silence. Then she laughed softly. "Look at that. Destiny sometimes writes in crooked lines, but it writes." Grayson stood there, not knowing what to say. For the first time, he didn't feel in control, and he didn't see Valentina as the woman from a bet, nor as an opponent. He saw her as someone who deserved more than he had ever been capable of being. "You look different," she said finally. He nodded. "Maybe because for the first time I'm trying to be someone real." Valentina looked away, gently squeezing Dorothy's hand. "Trying is good, but it only counts when there's no audience." He understood and didn't push further. But as he left that room, Grayson felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Respect, not for himself, but for her. And he knew at that moment that this woman still had much to teach. The rain began as a whisper, then as a scream. All of Miami was swallowed by an unexpected storm, the kind that makes headlines on the news and sweeps everything away with force, except for the feelings that live in the heart. It was late afternoon when the neighborhood siren sounded, warning of the imminent flooding. The community shelter was opened in a hurry. Valentina, who was volunteering at the local support center, ran back and forth organizing blankets, calming the elderly, handing out water bottles. She didn't expect him to show up there. But he did. Grayson walked in soaking wet, his shirt clinging to his body, hair messy from the wind, and an unsettled look in his eyes. No bodyguards, no assistants, just him. When Valentina's eyes met his, there was a silence between them that contrasted with the chaos outside. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said, not looking away. Grayson gave a small, tired smile. "I come here often. I just didn't know you did too." The generator failed for a few seconds, leaving the shelter in darkness for a brief moment. Lightning lit up the tense faces of the sheltered families. Then the lights returned, dim and yellowish. Later, when things had settled down and the volunteers gathered in small groups, Valentina stepped out into the covered back patio. She needed to breathe. The storm still raged, but under a makeshift tarp there was shelter. Grayson followed in silence. They stood side by side for a few minutes, listening to the rain hit the plastic. He finally spoke. "There's something you deserve to hear, something that's hard for me to admit." Valentina looked at him from the side, saying nothing. The sound of the falling water wrapped around them like a soundtrack. "You were the only one who saw me without a mask," he continued, his voice deep and calm. "And because of that, I hated you, because you made me see who I really was. Without the last name, without the power, without the excuses." Valentina looked away for a moment as if those words had slipped through a crack she didn't want opened. "And I hated you," she replied, swallowing hard, "for making me believe love only existed in stories told by others. In books, movies, lives that weren't mine." The two stood in silence, but it was a silence full of unspoken things, of wounds that still stung, even if they'd healed. He took one step closer. "I was raised to win, Valentina. But you taught me that sometimes winning is admitting you've lost everything." She took a deep breath. Her eyes were teary but steady, and sometimes losing is the only way to find yourself again. Outside, the world kept collapsing under the storm. But there, beneath that makeshift shelter, something was being rebuilt. No audience, no spotlight. Just two hearts that had once been broken, now beating in sync, and Grayson, who had always had everything, in that moment knew what it meant to want just one simple thing: forgiveness. The days that followed that night at the shelter were quiet, but not the kind of silence from distance. It was a necessary silence, like each of them was processing what had been said beneath the storm, those truths that had been swallowed for so long. Grayson didn't try to reach her the next day. He didn't call, didn't send flowers, didn't set up any press event. And it was exactly that made the difference. Without the flashes and without the gala suit, he dived into something he'd been building for months in secret. A space born from shame, from guilt, and from a sincere desire to do better. But only now, with courage, did he feel ready to show it. On a warm October afternoon, Valentina received an unexpected call. "It's Mr. Hale," said the polite voice. From the reception desk at the clinic where she was taking a first aid course, she hesitated for a second before heading downstairs. Grayson was waiting outside, leaning against the car, wearing jeans and a plain white shirt, with the calmest look she had ever seen on him. "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said before she could say anything. "I just want to show you something. It'll take less than 10 minutes. Valentina watched him cautiously, then nodded. "If you lie again, Grayson, I won't even come back to say goodbye." He opened the car door with a half smile. "I won't lie. That I can. Promise." The car drove through Latin neighborhoods, streets painted with graffiti slogans of resistance and modest facades she had known since childhood. They stopped in front of a restored old warehouse with large windows, natural light, and murals painted by local artists. Above the entrance, a discreet metal plaque read Fundación Reyes. Valentina stood still. "It's a training and support center. Entrepreneurship workshops, English and computer classes, legal aid, therapy. We've been running for 2 months, supported by community leaders, but no one knew I was the one funding it." She slowly turned to him, eyes filled with tears. "Why?" Grayson took a deep breath, eyes fixed on hers. "Because you taught me there are things that don't need applause, and that a real apology only matters when it comes with repair. This is mine. Or at least the start of it." She walked inside slowly. She saw women gathered in a circle, sharing experiences, young people learning about budgeting and leadership, children playing in a room filled with books and maps. It was more than a building. It was a future being built. Grayson followed silently. He wasn't trying to impress her. He didn't touch her. He simply let her see. In the inner courtyard, surrounded by native plants, she stopped and looked at him. "You didn't put my name here because you love me. You put it here because you hurt me." "Yes," he answered without hesitation, "but also because I finally understood the value you always had, even when I was too blind to see it." Valentina sat on one of the wooden benches, ran a hand through her hair, and took a deep breath. "This place, this is real." Grayson came closer, sat beside her, but kept a respectful distance. "I didn't come to start over with pretty words, Valentina. I came to begin with truth. If one day you want to walk by my side, great. But if you only want to see me from a distance, helping, I'll accept that too. Because this time, it's not about me." She looked at him with eyes full of the past, but also something new, something growing slowly, without promises, without fantasy. "Then stay, but take it slow." He smiled, and for the first time, not with arrogance, but with gratitude. Taking it slow is the only way to make it real. And so, without kisses, without an audience, without an announced happy ending, something much rarer was born, a true beginning. 2 years had passed since the storm, since the shelter, since the reunion that promised nothing, but planted everything. Miami, still pulsed with color and contrast, but for Valentina Reyes, the city now moved at a different rhythm. She walked the halls of the community hospital with a white coat over her shoulders and a new badge on her chest, registered nurse. The same badge she once dreamed of, then lost, and earned back with more strength than she thought she had. That spring morning, she was helping a young mother bathe her newborn, with patience, with tenderness, and with a peace that only comes after the war. As she stepped out of the room, she received a simple bouquet of sunflowers with a quiet note. "Today is your day. Thank you for never giving up on yourself. G." Across town, Grayson was living his new routine. Fewer meetings, more listening, fewer parties, more presence. The Hale hotel chain had gone through a deep transformation. Code of conduct manuals had been rewritten, training programs expanded, and now he made a point of knowing every employee's name, including the cleaning staff. At Fundación Reyes, her name wasn't just on the door, it was at the heart of the project. And he knew that was what brought him closest to being worthy of her. That late afternoon, under the golden sky of a random Saturday, the streets of Little Havana were decorated with paper flags, flowers picked by neighbors, and wooden tables set up in the yard of a community school. It was the wedding day. No cathedral, no marble columns, just simple chairs, live music, and the smiles of people who live life with calloused hands. Valentina entered without a veil, in a light dress, her hair tied with fresh flowers, her eyes shining like never before. She walked down the aisle formed by neighbors, children, women from the foundation, hospital patients, all there for her. Grayson waited at the end. He wore a linen shirt with rolled-up sleeves. When he saw her, his eyes filled with an emotion he didn't try to hide. At the time of the vows, the officiant paused and looked at them. "Before we continue, would you like to say something to each other?" Grayson took a deep breath. He looked at Valentina and said, his voice tight with emotion, "You taught me that love isn't earned with status or money. Love is born from the courage to strip away pride and truly see the other person. And that's what I choose every day, to truly see you." She smiled, eyes glistening. "And I choose to remind you, always, that true love doesn't turn you into a hero. It makes you human." In the background, the guests clapped with quiet, heartfelt applause. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was a miracle of real life. Two worlds that collided, broke, and by choice, rebuilt together. Later, they danced under lights strung up by neighbors and ate cake made by a foundation student's mother. There were no drones, no magazine covers, but there was truth in every gesture and love in what truly matters, everyday life. The bet became an old story, a distant memory, just a reminder of how a mistake can be the starting point for something greater if there's humility. That night, while everyone laughed and sang, Valentina rested her head on Grayson's shoulder and whispered, "Now, you've taken off the mask." And he replied, his voice low and full of gratitude, "You were the one who taught me how to breathe without it. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? On a scale from 0 to 10, how much did it move you? Leave your rating in the comments. I'd love to know how this plot full of twists, hard choices, and in the end, a love built on truth made you feel. If you liked it, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves a good story of resilience, and subscribe to the channel to catch the next ones. That really helps keep this space alive and full of emotion. Oh, and before you go, I picked out another story that might touch your heart even more deeply. Check it out here on the side. It's powerful, it's intense, and maybe even more unforgettable.